Hello, everyone. This is Yu Tsai. Welcome to Let's Talk. And I'm so excited to introduce you to my guest today, someone I have admired his work for many, many years. And he is global makeup artist to anyone from Kardashians to Beyonce. And most importantly, he's my colleague and I admire so much for American Beauty star. So everyone, welcome, global makeup artist, my friend, Sir John.
Hey everyone, hey people.
Well,
What's up, man?
I am so happy that I was able to find time to be with you here today. I know we've been planning this for a few weeks
Absolutely. For a
and
while.
for a while, but you know what? I thought timing is incredibly perfect because with what's going on in the climate we have right now, this is the perfect timing for us to discuss. And then one of the things that I love so much about you is I've been watching your career just skyrocket on cover
Thanks,
of
bro.
American Vogue, and it's incredibly beautiful. And because of the climate, and should not be a climate, I should say, because of the subject that's happening right now that needed to happen for so long, that we do need to talk about you as a Black man in this industry and kicking ass and how you
Yeah.
can inspire others to do the same. So let's
Thanks.
jump into that. How did you get your career started?
Oh man. So the drive-through version is I used to assist Pat and Charlotte, Pat McGrath and Charlotte Tilbury for a while. And I just also used to do the windows at Barney's and Bergdorf to make sure to make extra cash as an editorial assistant because you don't necessarily make a lot of money when you're working in fashion as an assistant. And then so I needed to make more money, so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go to Queens to Riviera. So I started doing makeup in a strip club in Queens at night, and then still working at the day with Charlotte or Pat Gay, Sam Fine, and things like that. So that allowed me to get there or work for free or work for those small rates. When we think about socioeconomic diversity, a lot of the people who can have these roles as assistants or interns or proteges, their parents bankroll their life. So I had to find a really creative way to make some money to do that thing or go that route.
But what inspired you to even want to pick up a brush?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I've been in school for art since I was like 6. My mom had me in school for art, and I went to a high school for art and a grade school, and then I moved to Atlanta when I was 18, like right after I turned 18, to an art school, and I couldn't afford it because it was like a really expensive private school, and I just didn't come from that much, financial backing. I had to support myself, so I had to drop out of school, and I found a job at Mac. Well, they kind of found me, so I started the Mac and Linux store. I had the highest sales in the Southeast at like 18. It was my first job ever, kind of like my first real job. They transferred me to New York at 19 years old, I want to say. So I got fired at 23 for being late. and then I started, to do the windows at Barney's and Bergdorf and Henry Bendel's on 5th and 56. I ran into a friend who used to work with me at Mac back in the day. His name is Yadim Carranza. He's in fashion as well. And he's like, hey, listen, you got to meet Pat McGrath. You got to meet this lady. She, we're come to the tents. Just come to one of the shows. This is when the shows were at the tents. And then I went, and she asked me would I be in Europe, like, for the Milan shows 2 weeks later. And I said, yeah, sure, I'm going to get there. And I didn't have a passport or any way to get there, but I made it happen, Actually, the girls who I was working with at the club kind of twerked me to Milan. They put a little package together of funds for me when I told them that I wanted to go, but I couldn't go, and they surprised me. And next thing I know, I'm in Milan, and I'm being sent to Naomi Campbell's hotel room. She was my first client, and it was just kind of the start of a lot of things.
Well, it's amazing and fascinating to hear this because with the Instagram world today, makeup artists grew and developed in a very different way. And you came out of that club world, and I know a lot of makeup artists actually came out of New York club world because for those guys who are younger generation, this is back in the 80s and 90s when underground clubs, people would dress up, and they're not trans, and some are, but a lot of them put makeup on themselves and to learn how to do makeup. Were you one of those club kids that was applying makeup on yourself?
No, I've never been that guy. It's now, I want to say in my 30s, I was comfortable with like a little bit of concealer or some powder if I need it, but I just was always just not that guy, but I went to Suzanne Bart's parties. I was one of the kids in New York City. I gave New York City 20 years of blood, sweat, and tears, but I'm in Los Angeles now.
And but that world definitely influenced your artistry.
Yeah.
It influenced what's happening now in the generations of makeup artists and
Yeah.
before pre-Instagram, I like to call it. And also Mac has been such a tremendous force in the industry. A lot of makeup artists come out working behind the counter of Mac. And I think it's because they really do allow people to take chances. And they were first
Yeah.
to embrace the transgender community, LGBTQ
Absolutely right.
community.
You know, listen, Mac is so legendary, and it grew up a generation of makeup artists. I mean, it was the pre-Instagram. That was the Insta look, you know. And listen, I've spent so much time backstage with Mac, and now I do like campaigns for Mac and things like that. But they've always been welcoming me with open arms, and all throughout points in my career. So when I was an assistant, when I was working behind the counter, and all the way up until Super Bowls or Coachellas, they've always given me massive support. So shout out to Mac and those kind of brands. But
And
yes, the business has changed. Like the business has changed in terms of being an artist. It's different now. Like people don't assist anymore. People don't feel like they need that education. But I don't feel like you can lead until you can effectively follow. You know, so it takes a great student to be able to be a great leader. And so for me, I was just happy to be an assistant. I was happy to be in the room, you know, shooting with Mario Testino and Charlotte, or Vanity Fair this and Annie Leibovitz. I was just really happy to absorb that information.
But what about you that I love the most is that you have been a quiet soldier. You were not one of the loudest in the room. In fact, you're probably one of the quietest in the room. But yet your work speaks so loudly. And I know that because I followed your career in the beginning, and you did pay your dues in New York. Like we all say that New York is a fashion capital for hair and makeup, and even photographers. I went to New York and paid my due, you know, because as you know, living in Los Angeles, there's always a stigma that, oh, you must not know what fashion is until you go to Paris or New York. So we paid that due. But when the transition of the magazine started putting celebrities on the cover, LA would definitely start being embraced. When Testino started getting a house in Hollywood Hills, we knew the movement was happening. And Marcel got a beach house in Malibu, and there was a shift. Definitely the huge shift. Italian Vogue was shot here in Los Angeles. And we begin to see talent like you really, really excel. And geographically, it became irrelevant. Rather, your talent became relevant.
Well, I'll tell you this, man. It wasn't easy. Like I went from being Pat's assistant to being on the same agency as her at Streeters. And listen, it wasn't easy as a black person in fashion. You know, there was so much lack of inclusivity. I was the only, and still to this day, which I'm not proud about and it's not cool, the only black person in the room, the only person who's not, you know, for example, I did a job 2 days ago, or I think, 2 days ago for a campaign for eyewear. And I'm the only person, there's not even a Latinx person in catering or anything like that. There's 35 people here. So I just feel like, you know, there's so much work to be done. I remember, you know, having my book, like they would look through my book and there would be Naomi in there, Beyonce, or whatever, Joan Smalls, Jordan Dunn, Anais Molly, and some of the greatest women of our time. But I had to take these girls out so my book could translate well across the pond. So it looks like I had to kind of hide the fact that I'm a black makeup artist. Not me, but the business, you know? And I mean, and honestly, at some point that's psychological warfare. And all those small things that happen culturally, it's a sense of trauma at some point, you know, as I look at when you can't rally around, you know, love you have for your community, it is traumatic, and it chips away at you, you know, to a point where I just realized, oh, I don't want to force myself on the fashion industry where they hire the same people, they want to have everyone laugh at the same jokes, they want to have the same passports, hold the same passports. But when you really think about it, that's the same thing that we see in the White House, you know, mirroring people who only look like I look, who have the same sentiments I have, who, you know, basically occupy the same space mentally in the wavelength that I do. And that's not modern, you know, that's not modern.
That doesn't encourage growth and doesn't encourage evolution and development. And interesting enough that Pat McGrath, she's black, and a lot of people don't know that, right? Pre-Instagram, people did not know that. And I'm
because she doesn't lean into it. That's why.
That's my point.
I'm gonna keep it real.
Can I say she doesn't lean into it? But right now, I feel like lean into as much as you can. If you're, you know, I'm embracing my color as much as I can now. And I have to tell you, to be completely honest with you, for 10 years, 15 years, in my own community, in Asian community, they didn't recognize me as which region I'm from because I'm so dark from being, when I say I'm Chinese, I get into arguments. If I go to a Chinese restaurant and order food in Mandarin, they're like, how do you speak Mandarin perfectly? I'm Chinese. Oh, no, you're not. It becomes an argument, and I don't get my dumplings fast enough, so I just stop speaking Mandarin in Chinese restaurants.
But you know the thing is, no, please tell me.
But you're absolutely right about what our community have become and how the color is so much, and no pun intended, so important. The palette, it is so important. It is not a black and white palette, the range of colors in between. And I said, celebrate the rainbow, because this is the month we're celebrating the rainbow. And you being so aware of that now, I think is so important. I do believe there's a lot of us who are silent champions, right? I always thought, okay, I'm Asian. I'm first Taiwanese to embrace broadcast television on American Next Top Model. It was really important to me, but I was silent. I wasn't out there waving a flag like, look what I'm doing. I thought, just do my job.
Do my job.
But through this time, and I'm choking up talking about, but through this time is that when I finally realized that our color is what we wear, and we need to amplify in any way we can. And that's through community like you, through Black Lives Matters, that I really learned what it meant to be Asians for Black lives. That's what I'm learning to celebrate. And every day it's incredible learning still.
Well, this is the thing, Yu Tsai. You have to realize is that if we were waiting on the fashion industry or the beauty industry to be more inclusive, we would still be waiting. What has been our champion, which has been our saving grace, is social media. It's like social media is so democratic. Everyone has a voice and is able to use it. And that's really what's propelled us into the future. But when we talk about, like, for example, I have so many friends. Everyone knows, like, my multicultural friends from all around the world, from Iceland to South America, right? But, and certain people, are wondering, why are we campaigning just for Black lives? And the thing that you have to realize is that, Black lives Black bodies aren't regarded in this country the way other lives are. It's even a study that people think that Black people have a higher pain threshold than other people. And what that translates to is the over-policing of our communities, disregard for us in healthcare or whatever that looks like. But listen, I feel like when we fight for everybody. When you look at the civil rights, for example, in terms of LGBT, we had a great win a couple Sundays ago, I want to say, or Monday. But when you think about it, what did they constitute that win? Where did that win come from? It came from civil rights. So like when we look at women's rights, gay rights, animal rights, it comes from civil rights. It comes from Black people like saying, this is enough. I'm being hosed down in the streets, actually campaigning for their freedom, campaigning for social and equitable justice.
And it's the first time we got to see solidarity in a proper way of definition, right? What was most incredible for me personally, from a silent worker just doing my job, is when I realized that I have a platform that I need to amplify. And I'll share the story with you guys. Is that in the early part of this pandemic, I have a membership at Equinox, and I emailed them and said, listen, I don't feel comfortable coming to this public space to work. And this is pre-pandemic, pre-governmental involvement. And just because being Asian, I have families in Asia, we knew this is going to happen. We started shipping masks in so we can donate to churches. And yes, and the show stemmed from the fact that we were raising money for surgical masks for first responders. And we raised over 100,000 masks up to today. It's quite an incredible process. But during that time, when I wrote Equinox, I simply said, listen, I want to pause my membership. And they wrote me, goes, you still have to pay. You can't pause. I was so baffled by it. I just put a tweet out there. And I'll be first to admit, it was an anger tweet. How are you treating people this way? And the incredible response from DM, from everyone, from Asian community, for community of colors, and for community of people who are going to Equinox but didn't have a voice, is, oh my God, they're saying the same thing to me. 3 days later, I get a text, I get a DM from Equinox headquarters saying, can you please take this tweet off and we'll give you your money back.
Really?
I was like, what? You actually pay attention? I go, well, let me think what I should do here. Then I said, I will take my tweet off when you post that you will give everybody their money back for the time they pause. And they did. And when they did that, when they announced that, it's when I realized I may not be the first one who put that voice out there. I'm sure there collectively is a lot of people complain, but I realized that I have a platform and I have a responsibility. Absolutely. And that's where Let's Talk kind of came from. And that's why collectively I'm curating talent like you who are amplifying your voice, because, I don't think that we realize the power that we have, from makeup artists to stylists to people who are in the food industry, to anyone who has a voice should get a voice at this time. And that's why it's so dear to me to have you on the show.
Thanks, bro. I mean, you know what? This is the thing. We just have to do the work. I think that, we're in an era where listen, the genie's not going to go back into the bottle. Like I remember when COVID happened, I got so much training from companies. I work with brands that I'm ambassadors for. This is what we're going to do with the consumer. This is how we're going to massage their mind during this time. I brought on psychotherapists and people who are mindful coaches to talk about depression or what that looks like since you're sheltering in place. All of these things. But COVID was situational. It lacked emotion, but this revolution that we're having, and I call it revolution because there's a lot of change that's also adjacent to it. Listen, hundreds of thousands of people are marching in the same direction because they see that this is the most modern direction forward. You can't go out the side door or the back door. You have to go through the front door this time. And so I just feel like, listen, it doesn't always feel good or easy to speak up. I definitely remember times when I'm like, shit, am I going to lose it all by being vocal? Am I going to lose my contracts by speaking up for justice and equity and, things that really matter? And how it's an inside job. And the way we see ourselves is really affects our mental health. A lot of these things that we're seeing on the news and this Elijah guy, the Eric Garner, all these things. This is trauma. Like our community is inducing so much trauma. So I had to speak up. And honestly, I was willing to risk it all and still am, just to say what's right and to say what's not. So that's why I'm using my platform. I know people might not follow me any longer because they were like, where's the makeup? Where's the beauty? Where's the glam? Where's Beyonce? Where's this? It's not about that right now. It's really about making sure that we champion voices that are not heard or marginalized communities. They need a space right now. And so if I can be an usher of change or an usher of light in that way, that's my job. That's my job.
And I'm so proud of that because we have a journey together through American Beauty Star, and yes. I would share this candidly is that we both done a lot of televisions, and on that show we were learning a lot. And that show was very inclusive, and thanks to Ashley Graham, who made sure there was somebody of color that's on the panel with her, that's me, and make sure the mentor standing next to her is a Black man who, not just because he's Black, but he's incredibly talented and qualified for that job. And that was her initiative in making sure you were—
Adriana Lima.
That's right. And also Adriana Lima from first season who carried that complete messaging. And the show could have been completely replaced with all whitewashed people on Lifetime, but I'm so happy and glad that didn't happen. And then publicly, I thank her many times on the show that because of her, I didn't feel that I was an outsider. In fact, I belonged. And I always said that I feel like I'm an outsider in the fashion business because I don't do the fashion lifestyle thing. I myself don't wear fashion stuff. Okay. But I embrace it and love it very much. But through that time, I saw some of the struggle that you were having to find your voice, and you were looking for your voice as a mentor. And for guys out there on reality show, there are a lot of times that we don't get to say what we really want to say. The reality is edited in the way that it needs to be for the entertainment. And I felt your struggle. And I know we have one-on-one discussions that I just want you to find your footing. And I have to say, truly, I couldn't be more proud of you as a friend, as a colleague, that within the last 4 weeks, from the day I reached out to you to ask you to come on the show to today, that you have transformed yourself to the voice that you've been looking for. I don't know, you realize that? I know it. And it grows so warmly in my heart to see that you are willing to risk what is financial, lining the pockets, like what the White House is doing basically, right? And what Facebook is actually doing right now as well. I'm sorry, Mark Zuckerberg is lining his pocket instead of fighting for injustices out there. And a lot of brands today actually announced that they would no longer advertise on Facebook until he changed that policy. So all voice do matter. But I want to just say thank you for having this incredible voice. And one of the subjects you talk about when you go live, I think is very important, is about mental health. Because it's such a taboo in a Black community. It's not talked about.
Black and Hispanic community. I mean, listen, we grew up in a generation of, you got to go to church. If you're going through, you better go to give it to God, But I think that we're seeing, this is a new generation. There's so much change happening at the same time. And listen, mental health it's self-care. Self-care is not selfish, and it doesn't and people are always wondering, how do I say this when I say this? But even fragrance you spray on is mental health. Even cosmetics, that's mental health. It's an emotional well-being. You're leaning into yourself, and it moves the needle emotionally inside. Some people say, oh, well, listen, I'm not affected by beauty. I'm not, I don't care about that kind of stuff. However, if you're having a good hair day and you pass your reflection in a building window, it moves the needle emotionally. So that is it's adjacent to mental health. And so, I mean, in terms of beauty, yes, mental health is important, but on a larger scale, there's so much trauma. Listen, I go to a therapist, I have some tools, and if I don't know how to cope, I know so many millions of people around the world are just really in a space where they're not able to. And so the voices that when you see people, rioting or looting or burning or breaking, that's trauma. That's trauma.
That's
and so
pain.
I was talking to, it's pain. And I was talking to a friend, my friend's Jewish, and she's, all of her girlfriends are. And she was saying, well, listen, I don't know about, the looting. I don't know about the rioting part of it. That's adjacent to this truck. They come together, baby. And I'll tell you how. And the thing is, when we were silently protesting, it was a problem. When we were, legislation doesn't change that. But I say something. If you think about like 1937 Berlin, 1939 Berlin, when your grandparents were trying to free the face of oppression or evil, you would want cannons to roll down the street. You would want broken glass. You needed to shake the building. And so like that's all you're seeing now.
And you're absolutely right. It is all the pain, the oppression that for every race of color, right? Because it's not just the symbol of Black Lives Matter. To me, it rises all the different injustices and all different colors of people. And for us to concentrate on this now is so very important because it will permeate throughout other colors and it benefits all of us. And for me, I too had to come to awareness of that, and because I seen a lot of injustice happening in the Asian community, and starting this week of Trump calling it a Kung flu, I don't even know how to conjure up emotions because I only can feel hate, and hate's not where I want to
toward
be.
him.
Toward him, of course.
But I'll tell you something. I'll tell you something, Yu Tsai. This is the thing. He's a clown, right? And I have this tattoo and it says, God grant me the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can. I never look at it. If I did, I would make better decisions. But you have to realize one thing we can actually, what's good about the situation that we're in, not about him, what's good about it is the fact that there's so much unifying. I've never seen so much unity. And that's colorless, that's raceless, that's ageless. When you see these marches and these protests, there are people of all walks of life, all complexions, all backgrounds. It's like the United Colors of Benetton, all looking for justice and equity. And so, like, if we had another president, we would have been rocked to sleep. We possibly would not have this change that's been ushered in. So, yeah, screw him. But what the divisive environment has allowed us to do is show heart. Do you remember the Care Bears?
Oh, yes, of course.
We're doing the Care Bears there right now.
Yes, and I absolutely agree with you. We're boiling, it's like you're cooking, you're boiling a great soup. You keep boiling it for 24 hours, 48 hours until all the impurity comes up and you can scrape that impurity away. But that doesn't take away the pain and the hurt, your own personal growth of being bullied in school. And here we have, as somebody we're calling a president, basically bullying the entire race. And the reason I mentioned that story is not because it made more applicable to me of even further understand Black Lives Matter movement, right? Because now it's hurting us. And the reason I want to use this example is because for those who don't understand why Black Lives Matter, because it is the foundation and base of make all of us matter. But to get there, Black life needs to matter first because all the injustice has been happening for over the last hundreds of years.
I think if anyone now in 2020 and like as of today can't see that, the disregard or the fact, listen, there's so much systematic racism in the United States. It's in the DNA and the fabric. It's America's brand. I hate to say it, if you really think about it. And it's how we were built. Like this country was built off of the backs of Black slaves. We weren't slaves, we were enslaved. So when I say that, and the thing is, I talk to my Puerto Ricans, my Dominicans, my Cubans, and I always, we have this conversation often with different people. I'm never going to argue with anybody because I don't have time for that. But sometimes you have to lean in just to let people know, listen, the things that these people are fighting for, Black people, we all will benefit from. Even white people will benefit from. And when I say white people, that means that your children will have a more just future. Your children will have less strife. There won't be so many disparages in education. So it rises all of our boats when Black people go out there and campaign for social justice. It's really a win for society in general. And the thing is, if anyone who doesn't see it is willfully ignorant at this point, and they're part of the problem. Like literally, if you don't see it, if you say, I don't see it, it doesn't exist, and you know, oh my God, this is Sir John's imagination or whatever that looks like. And these people, why, how dare you take a knee? You're disrespecting a flag. You care about a flag more than you care about lives. And so at the end of the day, that's just not the, you know, the thought pattern I'm trying to entertain. I'm trying to basically heal the people who are broken in my life and my family and the people who follow me, you know?
Well, one of the things I do want to touch upon is that when you work as a makeup artist, as a global makeup artist, and I always said this, that the makeup artist and the hairstylist of the team on Glam Team, they truly are the therapists for the talent that's sitting in the chair, because it doesn't matter what the talent goes through that day. It doesn't matter you're Kardashian to a model to a Beyonce. That chair, when you sit there, you guys are the therapists in a way to make sure that they feel most beautiful. And I think that's something I want to really talk about, because I interview a lot of makeup artists, and some of them just miss the understanding of what makeup really does. Listen, in the world of retouching, I can make any makeup pretty, right? But that is not the point. But that is just, that's not the point. The point is that magic wand of a brush when you touch the skin of the person that's in front of you. And I want you to share that, because I heard you talk about this and how important it is being a makeup artist, not just applying makeup. It's about your heart and soul, and it's about mental health.
Yeah. See, honestly, I tell so many, you know, I do master classes or speak at a beauty con or IMATs, and I let people know, a community of people who want to do this next or who are coming up. It's, guys, I'm not in the business of makeup. I'm in the business of people. You know, there's so many people who do beautiful makeup, gorgeous like jobs of, you know, or the best colorists, the best, you know, cuts, but they lack a connection with people. The reason I'm here, the reason that you're even talking to me and the people want to stay tuned in, because whatever that looks like, is because I love people first, you know, and I want them to feel good and feel championed around. I remember Rosie Huntington, she asked me, so John, how do you want women to feel when they leave your chair? You know, like, what does that look like? And I was like, well, I don't want them to feel pretty, because I feel like pretty is soft, you know? I don't want them to feel sexy, like, okay, you know, I want women to feel powerful. So like, for me, I want you to feel like you can do what you need to do. You feel a sense of, and mind you, a feminist who's listening will say, well, how does makeup, or why does makeup need to make me feel powerful? What does that look like? But at the end of the day, I want to be the battery in their back to do what the next thing they have to do when they get out that chair, whether it be, you know, hit a runway or go on the cover of a magazine, a Super Bowl, a Coachella, whatever that looks like. I'm there to raise their vibration. And I think that, you know, the most successful people who are in hair and makeup have an intimate connection and can see someone's soul. Like when I sit down with, you know, a celebrity or whoever it becomes, you know, if I'm at her house, whatever that looks like, I check in to make sure how are you feeling? Like, how do you feel? Like, it's before we go into makeup, okay, I get it. I know what dress you want to wear. I see your hair. That's cool. How are you? Let's check in. Let's do a temperature check. And that is, you know, a part of emotionally allowing her to put her hand back down and trust me. You know, you can't, it's just not so transactional as I'm going to do your makeup and then you're going to go. And that's just kind of how I approach it. You know, I just feel like when we look at cosmetics, it is emotional. Like when you think about fashion, you can't look your handbag in the face. Your handbag doesn't cover an emotional scar that you had when you were 16 that you have a memory for. So cosmetics is so spiritual and emotional, and it resonates with us to our past and where we want to go.
Well, color theory does everything, right? Color makes you feel and react in a very different way. And I'm a true believer now, obviously being a designer and being a photographer. Color kind of is how we communicate with people. And yes, a right shade of red lipstick will build the confidence that you need for the talent to stand in front of my lens. And because let's be honest, that camera is very judgmental, right? What we do is very judgmental. And what we all need on our set is it's truly that solidarity too. Like we all check in with each other. Does this make you feel beautiful? And I think that's what I see that now on my set over the last 2 years, that women talents have definitely taken on that responsibility to say, no, this makeup does not make me feel confident. Therefore, I don't know how to project that confident energy that you want from me. And that's definitely a shift. And I enjoy that and I love that, because at the end of the day, you can capture whatever you want here, but you can't capture what's in here unless it's truly there. And we can see that in 1950s pictures, right? All these nice urban pins or a picture of like one off of splash of milk or whatever on faces. You notice a lot of my eyes are closed. because it's about the artistry of just the paint on their faces.
Damn,
It
that's
really,
deep.
and Urban Pen shoots a lot of picture with hands on the faces covering the eyes. If you look at it,
Yeah.
a lot of it. Or profile, not looking to the camera, because those were really painting with light and just makeup and emotions with hands.
Yeah.
But when you begin to have a beauty image, which we do a lot, right?
Yeah.
That if it doesn't translate in the eyes, it doesn't resonate. And we saw that last 3 years ago when retouching went way overboard.
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
We can see the skin, we can feel it.
3
and
years
you just
ago.
get this
You mean last summer? You mean last fall?
it's
Shit,
still
last
happening.
week?
But you just see that deer in the headlight looking at you like this,
That's so
and
true.
then you're going, okay, I'm supposed to relate to it. And I loved it because what happened is that the European consulates in the beauty community says, all right, in order for you to publish any beauty images for advertising for both hair, makeup, and Pantene started this because I was contracted with them, is that you had to show before and after. And there's actually an ad council that looks at that and said, that's too much retouching on that hair because it's not achievable and it's not real. And Maybelline kind of got in a little trouble with the lashes situation where they had to go back and redo. And I love that because reality is we need more realism. Let Instagram be the fancy world that the YouTubers and the influencers, which by all means I respect all their work, but to me they're in a category of fantasy. But if we're truly talking about what makes people feel good from the inside and be able to recreate on their own, or at least assist it to be authentically beautiful, it has to come from the eyes. And that's, it has to come from the eyes. And it's,
you know what though, you said, I'll tell you something also. As we're thinking about, like, as you're talking about the eyes and we're talking about social and the over retouching, right? As we go back to mental health, that's adjacent as well. Like this over retouching, this, the perfection, the changing, the body on, there's apps you can do for all these kind of things. But what it does is like, and I'm a huge feminist. I'm girl power all day, right? And I just feel like what it does is it separates a woman from herself. Like as soon as you take your phone in the morning, and it doesn't happen to guys in the same way. So disproportionate, it doesn't happen to us. So the thing is, as soon as they pick up their phone in the morning, they're bombarded with things that chip away at a connection that they have for themselves or with themselves. Like when you watch television, if you think about the Mad Men era of marketing, all that stuff came, concealer, anti-wrinkle, all of these, they made holes in our psyche to fill with a product. That's capitalism, So when we look back at the history, it was designed to make you feel less whole. So I think the goal is you have to check out on your younger generation of girls from 7 on up because they're being chipped away at, and that induces depression, anxiety, and sometimes even suicide.
Well, it's interesting you say that because you do have clients that really amplify the messaging of perfection, but done in a way that is so overboard. And we can talk about that because we both share the same client. We both work with Kim Kardashian and the elder Kardashian family.
I only worked with Kim once.
Really?
That's Mario's girl, yeah. I only worked with Kim one time, yeah. But she's a sweetheart. I love her to death.
Absolutely. And funny enough, for those people out there don't know that without all that makeup, she has the bone structure. She is beautiful. She is gorgeous. It's stunning.
And the nicest person. She's literally one of the kindest people you'll ever meet, period.
And people know this, and I said this before, when at the rise of her career, I started shooting her and Mario was doing her makeup. I remember the days that every time I would request Mario to do makeup on a Harper's Bazaar shoot, or Esquire cover shoot, they would say, no, he does Kardashians. We don't respect his work.
Wow.
But look at his career now, kicking ass. That's I love that. Let's go against the grain and really come through and do what you do. And I think that's so ever important too, because in our culture, in the beauty culture, there's so many different voices.
Yeah, for sure.
But within
honestly, not really, and I'll tell you why. And I'm gonna keep it real. I think that we're in an era right now, Yu Tsai, and I challenge anyone to. I think we're in an era of Gen Zers. They shop by values, and I think that right now, the reason I feel free speaking about cultural issues, speaking about things like mental health, whatever that looks like, wellness, is because you got to stand. Right now, we're in a period in time. There's so much happening. You have to stand for something. You have to have a point of view. And to be honest with you, a lot of people in our business, they don't have a point of view besides what's pretty or what's beautiful. So like for me, and I'm okay with my few followers and not having millions, but because I can be completely real with them and and I have a connection with the people, and that connection that I have with them is because of the fact that I stand for something, and whether it be social change, justice, or making a woman feel whole, this whole notion of over retouching and all that kind of stuff like that, you got to stand for something. I think that we're we're seeing some, it's like the 60s, you know, that cultural change that happened in 67, you know, from about 67 to 71, whatever that looks like. We're in an era of change. Listen, we thought COVID was the biggest thing that we're going to see this year, but COVID was literally set the scene, or was the appetizer for what we're experiencing right now, which is a whole shift in understanding, awakening, and everything. Yeah.
Well, in order to do that, it definitely needs to stem from the publications. It needs to stem from the business of companies. Yeah. And I know that you're no longer, I even look at you as a makeup artist, only you're an activist, and you're speaking for so many of the people who don't speak up. In this path, how do you keep the clients accountable? How do you keep these businesses and companies that you work with, how do you keep them accountable? Because you do have a voice to make a change. Yeah.
So listen, this is not outward facing, you know, people on the outside can't see this, but when everything happened a couple of weeks ago, I held L'Oreal to task. And even if anyone's here from that Zoom that we had, hey guys, you know, we had a Zoom with like a town hall with 200 employees or something like that, and some of the executive board members. And my whole thing is, and I'm doing one with Shiseido, shout out to Tiffany, very soon as well. But for me, it's like whatever space you occupy in any direction that you have an ear or someone's attention, that's the direction that you should use it. You know, I don't work in legislation. I don't do, you know, all this other kind of community organizing. But what I do well is the beauty industry and the fashion industry knows who I am. And so what I can do is I can hold them accountable. And what accountability looks like is making sure that don't just be an ally, be an accomplice. An ally is someone who is very comfortable helping you or to see justice or to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And as long as they're comfortable, as long as, you know, I'll row my boat with you, as long as, you know, the waves don't mess up my dress. But an accomplice is what we need. We need accomplices. And accomplices are people who will go home and tirelessly talk to their children, educate themselves, educate other white people about whiteness and white supremacy, what that really looks like. An accomplice is willing to go into a protest and actually get arrested with you. Or go to her boss and say, hey, you know what? This conversation that we're having actually is quite oppressive. It makes, you know, some of the people that we have here who are black or brown or Asian or whatever that looks like feel marginalized. You know, so that's modern. That's what modern activism look like. And it doesn't have to happen on a grand scale. It can happen in any direction, at a water cooler, in the mail room, or whatever that looks like. But yeah, I have an obligation to hold the brands accountable that I'm working with. I can't just take your money and just do stuff anymore. No, like, are you mirroring the times? You know, are you echoing voices? Do you want to hear voices that are in a novel direction than your own? You know, so I think that's the only way forward. And sometimes that's not popular. It's not popular to speak up, you know, but it's what we have. It's what has to be done.
And it takes people like your stature in order to make those movements happen. I mean, we know that there's only two billionaire CEOs, right, in a world that's black. Like, if you look at statistics, there's so few black women in the CEO positions owning own business. It's crazy. And that's because they can't get loans, number one. Because you're required to get loans from the bank, and the color just you don't get those opportunities. Right. And I think this is a time of shift. And when we talk about mental health, we talk about color, we talk about how do we make these changes, it really starts with the corporations. It really starts with the community of corporations, who they hire and how they surround, what they surround each other with, right? How do you grow and understand about the African-American culture where you don't have African-American friends? I remember this post, and I love her post. Lindsay People-Wagner posted on.
Yes, love her. Yeah.
She, and I got to work with her on 2 covers of Teen Vogue. By the way, I thought I would never shoot for them because I've been going after for 15 years. All of a sudden, when she took that position, I was the first photographer she hired. I was like, wow. So she had an agenda. She knew what she was doing. And she posted this, and she's we're doing a time when everybody's posting a black square. She goes, before you post that black square, can you just scrub through your own scroll and tell me how many black friends you actually have, first of all? Because that square means nothing if it's not already in your DNA. Don't even put that out there. It offenses me. That's what she said. And I love her for that, because it's absolutely true. And I'm glad that we're all learning, we're all growing. But you should have.
To your point, with the brands, and I made a video on my Instagram, like next steps, because I'm really solution oriented, and I think the goal is to make sure that, which I just can't believe we're still having this conversation in 2020, that there's a diverse board, that the people who are at the executive level, who are in the hiring, the HR departments, the marketing and advertising firms are the massive aggressors of pushing an agenda. An agenda that's not multicultural. I mean, so really, it's not one direction that we should occupy diversity, but it's tiered, you know. And the thing is, it doesn't. I shouldn't be the voice that you listen to, because I have, like, you can Google me, or I might seem popular, I might have this client. Listen to every Black voice. Listen to the people who, you know, like hear everyone. I think I'll always say this, because I've been campaigning for women's rights for so long. We go to Women of Worth events, making sure that we are championing women's voices around the world. And the thing is, you have to realize, when a woman comes into the office and say, hey, listen, someone followed me down the street for 2 blocks, we're up in arms. You know, when a woman says, hey, listen, I want to go walk to my car, but I don't feel quite safe because it's like 9 p.m. or whatever that looks like, we rally around her to make sure she feels whole and safe, and we get her to her vehicle. But if someone came into the offices and says, you know, talks about a racist atmosphere or whatever that looks like, you know, whether they be at a big magazine or a fashion brand or whatever that means, we think, oh, it's possibly your imagination. It's, you know, and that's really the work that needs to be done. I mean, like, listen, we wanted cruelty-free on cosmetics or skincare, we got it. When we wanted, you know, vegan this or clean initiatives, we got it, you know? So, but there's so many more boxes that need to be checked, and we need to still campaign and honestly shake the table and raise hell until we do. And when I say raise hell, it doesn't have to be aggressive. It's just honestly still having the conversations, whether it makes people feel comfortable or not.
Well, I just think that you should not be the only Black person in the room as a token person on the set.
No,
you should never, ever be that. And I have to say, for me, because I consider myself a minority and I didn't make enough effort, you know, but when it comes to casting and all that, yes, absolutely. Yeah. You know, I'm always, but here's the hardest thing too, is that the Black community needs to rise up as well. And because it is hard to find Black photographers, because we can't find them because they're not putting themselves out there. So I encourage you guys out there, and I know
I want you to think about this,
talking about.
And I want you to think about this. It's also, I had this conversation with someone. It's not that there's not Black talent that's ready. You have to realize that there's white talent that's groomed from a very young age.
That's
so
right.
In terms of the interns, in terms of the assistants, in terms of the people
exactly what I'm saying.
It goes deeper than the people who are ready. But how did they get ready? How did a generation of European makeup artists get ready? Because the doors were open for them. And if it wasn't because they were white, but their complexion wasn't holding them back. But
what they have now today that we didn't have 5-10 years ago is Instagram. Put your work out there, go after it, and don't let, and I was taught this to someone else have told me, don't let your color be the reason you don't go for something, please. So John, I make excuses. If I didn't get a job, I go, it's easy for me to say, oh, I didn't get that job because I'm Asian. Oh, that's the easiest excuses to have. And I want to be an example for people of color as well. Yeah. You know, I got to shoot magazine covers years and years, and I never even thought about my skin color for a while, right? Until people remind me of it. And I
can't forget. I can't forget about mine. And so
that's my point.
And that's privilege. You have to realize that's privilege.
I know.
Because Blackness, you can't tuck away. You can't hide it. You are constantly reminded from the moment you walk out of your door that there's something that other people identify as other.
And that notion of you have to always remember, make other people remember that, and make sure they hire you because you're Black. It's the pendulum has to swing really, really far, or in order for us to find the equilibrium. For me, I said this on the other day's talk, that I hope when I step out, when I can go to the supermarket, when I look at newsstands, I hope I see every single cover as color people of some sort. And I think you have to go that, you have to do it. And I hope Vogue's apology, Anna Wintour's apology, is sincere and is real. It stemmed from reality. And God knows, there's a whole different discussion to be had. But I really do hope. And I hope the changing of the guards at Harper's Bazaar US, it's a
Harper's Bazaar.
Right?
Yes,
it's
Harper, Samar.
Right?
My babe. So congratulations, shout out. That's beautiful. That's movement. That's,
you know what I mean?
That's movement.
We're moving that meter, we're changing the dial, and having this conversation today with you will continue to pushing that dial to the right direction. And I'm the one to say, go completely so far. And I'll give you an example. When the hashtag #MeToo happened, my agent called me and said, you're not going to work for a while. There's going to be a women photographer. I go, well, great. About time. Let that pendulum swing. Because you know why? Because it will swing my way if it has to swing that way. Asian will have their moment if that's what it requires. I'm lucky enough. I have so many different careers going at the same time. I can say that. So guys, don't come for me by saying that. Don't come for me for saying that. But what's more important to me was that we all, and I even dedicate an entire week of talk just with women photographers so people can see how inspiring they are. And truthfully, I have sets of LGBTQ on my set. I have lesbians on my set. I have Asian women on my set. I as much as I can, I encourage diversity on my set.
Absolutely.
Because that is a true education, right?
Yeah.
I didn't.
Absolutely right.
Listen, I thank Essence Magazine for giving me 2 years of amazing relationship, shooting over 18 or 19 covers with them, because that was the best Black history lesson I ever given. And we need that. We need the Black community to also embrace us in a way, so giving us the opportunity to learn, right? And that's what I mean by recognizing the opportunity that's there. And yes, I will be the first to champion to see the community rise, the Black photographer rise, and makeup artists, whatever the title they are, is happening, is changing, and it starts with this movement. And it starts with this conversation we're having now.
Absolutely. And honestly, that's the way to do it. And some people may see this as like, oh, I'm so tired of talking about race. But it's like, and I said this, I had a quote, and it's like, listen,
too bad.
It's a privilege to educate yourself about race instead of having racism, instead of having to experience it. Like, it's literally, it's something that's a blessing that you can learn, you know, and see or read upon or educate yourself or unpack, you know, things that you didn't know, instead of having to actually be on the other side and have to deal and face, you know, and I think there's so many marginalized communities, whether they be LGBTQ, you know, women's rights, like there's so much happening with women right now at the same time that's also adjacent. There's been so many, you know, so much, you know, and I don't know, my heart bleeds for everyone in all these different spaces, but all I can do, man, is just be the change I want to see and make sure that the people I am with, the companies and the brands that I work with, represent diversity in the most modern direction forward. And it feels good. And once we have these conversations with companies, some companies are kicking and screaming and saying, listen, I don't necessarily need to be a multicultural. I don't necessarily need to have Black skin on my feed. It doesn't work with the aesthetic, whatever that may be. But those companies will be on the wrong side of history. I think so. We've always seen, you know, at some point, you know, in the past, it's either are you on the right side of history or on the wrong side of history.
I can give you a great example is that Victoria's Secret fought that they didn't have enough Black in the campaign. They were white could be, and body shape, and look at them now with changing of the guards. I guess they learned their lesson. And you know what? But
body shape and body image, like, you know, this is the thing. You have to realize, Yu Tsai, true inclusivity, true diversity.
Thank you.
Yes, it's skin, but it's also body image. It's also, you know, weight, pay inequities. There's so many things that truly inclusive people. You can't be inclusive and say I'm fighting for, you know, Black rights, but I don't like gays, like, or I don't like, you know, or whatever that looks like. So to be truly inclusive is to actually walk forward with an open mind and open arms, and just want to ingest and learn as you go. Listen, we're in a new generation. We can hopefully learn from the babies, because my generation didn't get it right. I was born in '82. My birthday's on Wednesday.
Happy birthday!
July 1st. Thank you, babe. Thank you. And we are not the ushers of change. This digital generation behind us, Gen Z, they're really just like rock stars, man, in terms of community organizing protests, making sure, like, they're just making the world a better place. So I'm actually happy that they are. Listen, I grew up I had a beeper in high school. I'm an analog guy in a digital world. Like, do you know what I mean? So, but we can learn.
Why do you have to date us? Why do you have to go there?
No, but that's experience. I wouldn't change it for anything in the world. I wouldn't change it.
Absolutely.
But hey, listen, man, I want to let you know, I'm also proud of you. You know, I'm proud of you, Yu Tsai, that, and I told you this, you have to realize that with laughter, with a sense of, you know, with your delivery, you can tell someone anything if you can make them laugh. You can teach someone anything if you can make them laugh, period. You can put anything down their throats in terms of your messaging, in terms of a thought, an idea, a conversation, if they are allowed to laugh, because they're completely vulnerable and open. So what you're doing, man, is you're doing the work, but in a really cool, swagged out, comedic way that is needed. You know, there's so much that we see that it kind of just makes us not down, but there's so much seriousness. I'm a serious guy. I'm not even a funny guy like that. But what you do is you're bringing some love and light into the situation that's much needed, bro. Much needed.
Thank you so much. And thank you for being a champion out there for the voices of all the injustice. And thank you so much for just ever evolving and continuing to impress me. And honestly, I know your work, and they're always going to be beautiful. But now I know you, and it's even more beautiful than your work. So thank you so much for your time, and you guys out there. We're here because we want to share with you the behind the scene of our business, because what you see out there outside the fashion world, yes, there are conflicts and there the inequity of people not being hired in corporations, but in the world of creativity, we also have that problem. And I'm glad that we can have this opportunity to share that with you, because when you open a magazine next time, do look at the credits and see who's doing the work, and champion for people of color to be involved in those magazines as well, because it requires your social action in order to make social injustice change. So thank you guys for your time, and thank you, Sir John, for your beautiful.
You president.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. And then what? I invite you to please come back, because I would love, because this month coming up, it is mental health month for
minority mental health.
For minorities. And I would love for us to have a conversation around that, because in the Asian culture as well, that we don't talk about that. And we know people around us go through that, and especially through beauty and through what we do. Perhaps we can put some spotlight on that and allow people to talk more about it, because it's only way we can find solutions.
Bye, guys.
Until we see each other again, thank you so much. Well, thank you guys so much again for being here with me on Let's Talk. That was Sir John, global makeup artist, who I am so awestruck at how he has developed just within the last 4 weeks of becoming such an activist in our community, for LGBTQ, for the Black community, for Asian community, for any equities out there. And I think he's absolutely right. It starts with educating, start with learning from the Gen Zs. They are making waves and organizing protests and marches more so than we have ever done in our generation, and using the social media power to spread the word of what we need to do to continue changing the dial in our society. And I couldn't be more proud to call him my friend. And thank you so much again for joining me. And thank you, Sir John, for being with me today.